The risks of human trafficking have been greatly increased because of the Biden administration's open border policies. Mr. Sequeira, would you agree that what is most urgent is to secure the southern border, and enforce our immigration laws to stop human trafficking?
Thank you, Ranking Member Foxx. Yes, I would agree with that, and I think everyone would agree that the border should be secure and that the federal government should do more to ensure that there isn't extreme cases that we've seen all too recently at the border with human trafficking. And certainly the American workforce and American workers, I'm sure, would appreciate increased border enforcement so that they don't have to unfairly compete against workers who have not come to the country legally.
Well, I wish you were right in saying almost everyone, but obviously that isn't the case because the Biden administration is not enforcing the law. Many employers in North Carolina use the H-2 programs when no U.S. workers are available for these jobs. DOL regulations are intended to ensure that H-2 workers do not displace American workers. And I am very familiar with the rules and regulations and hear from employers all the time about this. So, Mr. Sequeira, what do the statute and regulations require before an employer is approved to receive H-2 workers, and what has been your experience with these regulations?
So there are very complex regulations by the Department of Labor and additionally through the Department of Homeland Security. But in essence, you can boil the process down to 4 major requirements. The Department of Labor has to determine that the employer is actually offering a temporary or seasonal job, that it's a bona fide business with a bona fide job on a temporary basis. They require the employer to pay a mandated wage. Again, the government sets the wage at a level that it thinks is sufficient to protect U.S. workers. Then that job opportunity has to be advertised to U.S. workers. They have first shot at these jobs. They have a right to the jobs. If they're qualified, you are required to hire a U.S. applicant. And even in the H-2A program, that requirement extends through the 50% point of the employment period. Even if you've already gone to the trouble of hiring hire H-2A workers because you had no U.S. workers show up, if a U.S. worker shows up halfway through the employment period, you're still required to hire them. So there are extensive requirements in the regulations that employers are required to adhere to, and by and large, they work.
Well, that's my understanding too. Contrary to what we just heard a few minutes ago, they're paying the wage that is set. And let's talk a little bit about that. DOL sets the wage rates for H-2A workers for different regions around the country. But many employers believe that these wage rates do not accurately reflect market conditions, and the unpredictable nature of the rates makes it challenging for employers to know what their labor costs will be. Mr. Sequeira, what are the flaws in how DOL calculates the H-2A wage rates?
I'm not sure we have enough time today to really discuss that in detail, but I would say in general terms, there are a lot of complaints with the way the wage data is collected and analyzed by USDA, and I think many of those can get into methodological problems and sample sizes. But the biggest problem in the end for employers is it's just simply not predictable. Employers and farmers don't know from one year to the next what their wage rate will be. In many areas of the country, the wages will go up 5, 10, sometimes even 20% from one year to the next. And you simply can't, particularly as a farmer who doesn't set the price for their crop, you can't effectively plan when you don't know what your labor costs are going to be.
I believe they went up about 17% recently. I know down in Florida because I had some friends contact me about that. Well, we'd be happy to get from you an analysis that we could submit for the record, since we did not have enough time to go into answering that question a little more thoroughly, and I appreciate the fact that there's not enough time. So if you'll submit some material for us, we'll get it in the record. Thank you very much for your testimony. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member.